So I do like some notifications on my watch. There, I said it.
Welcome to Frackulous, a technology podcast for humans. Episode 332. iPhone 10R, IRL, robot watches, and robot cars.
Do you want to talk about my iPhone 10R?
Yes, let's hear about your iPhone 10R. Last time you were unsure about whether you'd actually get one or manage to get one or not. And you have.
Yes.
Has it got a button?
It has a button on the side, Jeff. Yes.
Well.
But not one at the bottom. But no, I popped into my local Apple store. I got a reservation quite easily. I looked at the coral because there were two that interested me, the red and the coral. I had a reservation on the red, but thought I'll just check the orange one first. And yeah, the red's the one. The red's the one for me.
That's what I picked up today as well.
Did you?
Not for me, but for my wife. And originally she had chosen that funny yellow colour.
Oh, the banana.
Banana, yeah, but not quite banana. It's a bit like a burnt banana or something, and it's just had that kind of all a Kylie, slightly yellow ochre look to it. And Kerry said, "Oh, it's nice and sunshiny." And then we were comparing different colours of yellow that occurred naturally within our kitchen against the yellow that was on the screen. And very quickly we decided that yellow is going to age very quickly. So we went with a product red as well. As I talk now, it's in a box on the dining room table, and my wife will be doing her very own unboxing of that later on this evening.
On her YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So if the orange had been as red as the red is, I definitely would have gone for that. But it was just a bit too peachy. Didn't quite set it off. Whereas the red is beautiful. It is a beautiful, beautiful phone.
So let's cut to the chase, Will, because you are one of the few people, I guess, who is not only an iPhone 10 owner, but also an iPhone 10R owner. So I'm curious because the iPhone 10R, for those of you who haven't seen it, is somewhat larger than an iPhone 10. And it's got a different screen technology. It uses LCD rather than OLED, and it's got a single camera. So how do all of these differences mix to create what is in essence a cheaper phone? Does it feel cheap?
It doesn't feel cheap at all. It feels really, really nice. The screen, I actually think, in some respects, is better than the 10 because there's this weird thing with OLEDs where when you're scrolling, some of the colours don't move at the same speed as others, and it creates this weird ripple effect. I don't know whether you've ever seen that when you're in Tweetbot in dark mode.
What about when you're not scrolling? Because whenever I saw your 10, I would go, terrible, no button, control panel top right, but ooh, the screen's nice. That's what I'd always say.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's got True Tone. I think it's a really good screen on the 10R. And it doesn't have that weird ripple effect that you see on OLED. So I'd say this is the best LCD screen you'll see. And there are a few times where I would say the 10 looks better than the 10R, if I'm honest.
The pixel density, the pixels per inch is much less, if I remember, on the 10R compared to the 10.
It's a 2x phone. So it's that thing, it's the same pixel density as the iPhone 4.
That's perfect for listening to your podcast then, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's been a lot of fuss made about the screen, the fact that it can't show 1080p video in full resolution. But this is, if you can see 1080p, the difference between 1080p and this resolution on a screen this big, I just don't think people can. It's an incredibly good screen and video looks amazing on it. And I think people are picking up on the specs rather than the actual experience of using a device. And if it did have a 1080p screen or a 4K screen, it would use more battery. It would have to run more pixels. It would need more memory. So I think Apple's actually made the right choice here. But I'm a little bit ranty about it because people on the internet, experts on the internet who have probably never even seen it, are saying it's ridiculous. It doesn't have a 1080p screen and it doesn't need a 1080p screen. It's fine.
What does the R stand for? Reduced, redacted?
I don't think it just stands for R.
Yeah, but come on.
It's the letter before S.
But in terms of size, here's the weird thing. I now think this is the perfect size phone. It's so weird.
Is it not the same size as the 10 or the 10X Max?
No, it's bigger. It's bigger than the 10. But I'm going caseless on it currently.
Ah, cool. Controversial.
Which does feel a bit naughty. But it's such a nice phone. And I think with a case, it would be too big. And there's also the fact that for some reason, Apple doesn't make any cases for it. So I bought a bumper, but I've only put it on once and gone, I'm going to try without. I'm on the upgrade program, so I've got Apple Care Plus with it.
Uh-huh.
So I have that safety net that if I do smash it, it's covered.
A couple of other things that are in the specs, Will, I'm interested just with regards to the screen. First of all, just looking at the Apple specs sheet here, comparing the 10S and the 10S Max with the 10R. You talked about the pixel resolution, fine. The contrast ratio is on the OLED displays of the 10S and 10S Max is 1 million to 1, whereas the 10R is quoted as 1,400 to 1. That's the first thing. I'm interested in whether you've got any views on how that may have impacted your viewing experience. And the other thing I'm really interested in is the lack of 3D touch on the 10R. Have you missed it?
So the contrast ratio I've not noticed, to be honest. I've not been in a situation gone, could do with more contrast. There are situations where the 10 screen does look better, but the 10R screen doesn't look bad. This is an incredibly good screen. What they've done with LCD on this is so impressive. And to be honest, I think if they'd got this screen tech working prior to OLED, they probably would have stuck with this. Because again, it doesn't have those other issues that OLED has. So I would say, on balance, this has some downsides. OLED has downsides. They have their pluses and their minuses, but neither is the clear winner. Now, 3D touch. I thought I was going to miss it. I really did. But the only thing I really use it for is control center, the two buttons on the front, the flashlight and camera, and the trackpad keyboard. And some people don't know that you can, on a 3D touch phone, if you've got the keyboard up, if you press down into it, it will then turn into a trackpad to allow you to move the cursor around your device.
Is that the same as putting your two fingers on an iPad keyboard
Yeah,
and
I
scrolling
think so,
around?
yeah. And I use that all the time on my 3D touch enabled devices. And what they've done cleverly is they've mapped that now to the spacebar. So all you have to do is press and hold the spacebar, and that will then turn the keyboard into a cursor. And I actually think that's better, because I have found there have been times where I've pressed in and then I've moved, or I've started typing, or it hasn't quite pressed and I've ended up back on the keyboard. Whereas by doing it with the spacebar, I find actually is a better way of doing it. So now on my 10, because the spacebar is enabled on that as well, I actually find I'm using that rather than pressing in now.
I know you know where I'm going to go with this, and I found on my 6S the other day, I accidentally did a hold and a 3D touch and found a function that I'd never discovered before. Quite technically, I can't tell you what that function is, because it was obviously a bit of a bolt-on afterthought. No, I think that's it's like, oh, okay, so if I press and hold there, that does it. I'll probably never use that, and I haven't used it. And it made me think, gosh, I've had my 6S for 2 years, and I don't really use 3D touch. So for me, the whole 3D touch thing was just another example of Apple going, we don't really have anything amazing or innovative, so we'll just bolt on this gimmick. Hey, everyone, here's a gimmick, nobody really uses it.
But they were trying something. I mean, this is the thing. They were trying it, and actually they've now, through that feedback, found out here are the things it's useful for. When I've been using Android phones which don't have that cursor mode, I find it so frustrating, and it slows me down, because I use that so many times a day just to move the cursor around the screen.
I do too.
That's a really good example of 3D touch.
I quite agree.
Turns out you don't need the full 3D touch experience to enable that.
Little secret for you, that's been around on non-3D touch devices for a little while. I think as far back as the iPhone 5S SE, iPhone 6, my iPhone 6 Plus had that, where again those devices don't have 3D touch, but you still do have the trackpad capability by using a long press down there on the spacebar, like you say.
I thought that was enabled in iOS 12, but I may be wrong.
Certainly, it's around on my iPhone 6 Plus. It may have been while I had the iOS 12 beta on there.
I thought it was enabled by iOS 12.
My old iPad Air 2 used to do it. That wasn't touch enabled, but you could press and hold to do certain things, and it wasn't a 3D touchscreen.
But overall, it's a really, really nice phone. And now I picked up Beck's 6S to do something on it and thought, oh my God, this is so small now. The way I feel when I used to pick up a 5-level phone. And this has become the new normal for me.
But Will, have you not seen Casey the last 2 weeks? And he's gone for like a small, cheap phone. And he's basically going down the whole smaller is better route, and phones are now too big.
I am in the smaller is better, but this thing is so nice, and it is a really nice size.
David, didn't you get one as well? I thought I saw you said you popped out and got one.
I have, but for my wife. My wife had, like you, an iPhone 6S, and it was just on its knees.
Even on iOS 12, it was on its knees.
Yes, her iPhone 6S. I think there were battery issues going on in there as well. It was very slow. It was freezing for a minute or so. It seemed every time she was opening the calendar. We'd started from scratch on the operating system again, and it was still doing it. And she just said, "David, get me a new phone." So we've traded in a whole load of Apple gear.
Why should a device that's worked for 2 years suddenly then stop working back for 2 years? Because then you're back to the conspiracy that Apple, make your device go wrong on purpose.
I think if you don't upgrade it, it will be fine. But if you want to have advancements, then you have to face the fact that they're going to use more power from your device.
Another reason for not upgrading your iOS.
And also the fact that batteries naturally degrade, whether it's 1,000 charge cycles on one of these lithium-ion batteries, but they do tend to degrade over time. And I know you can get the batteries replaced and so on, but, the camera technology is an awful lot better in her new phone. And that's what I want to ask you about. Obviously, image quality is a big deal for you, and your eyes are finally attuned to it. So what difference does the new camera make? And things like portrait mode with a single camera where it's all computational rather than just a bit of it. What have you noticed?
So as I suspected, portrait mode only works on human faces.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be pulling focus on anything that doesn't have a face, which is fine, I guess. I mean, I prefer on the 10 being able to have more control over it and be able to use that portrait mode on other things. I do like the fact that it uses the wide camera though for portrait mode. I found there are times where I'm sat across a table from somebody and I put it into portrait mode and I'm having to really lean back to get them in a shot, whereas with the wide, especially with kids, you've got a higher chance of getting them in the right spot, and the fact that it's much better at low light on that wide camera. So there are benefits to both. There's no clear winner whether the 2-camera system or the 1-camera system is the better. So that's why I would recommend having 2 phones.
I was in an abandoned tube station, as I often spend most of my time, last week, and I had my iPad with me because I have my iPad with me to show photos as part of a tour. And during a quiet moment, I never take photos on my iPad. I took a picture of this empty abandoned corridor in low light on my iPad. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, that looks really crisp and clean and clear. And so I got out my 6S and I sort of put it in exactly the same spot and I took the same photo. And suddenly you could really see the difference of how, bad the 6S camera was and how amazing the iPad. Yeah, and I've got them side by side. And if you look at them just on screen at home, you can really tell the difference. So part of me now just wants to get a new phone, just have a better camera.
But you shouldn't have to get a new phone to get a new camera, Jeff. Apple should let you have a new camera every year.
Should be modular. Remember those modular
phones? Hey, that's not a. Well, maybe that is an innovative thing that Apple could bring out. The iPhone M, the iPhone M, where M is modular. Slide in a new camera. Why doesn't someone do that? Why hasn't a manufacturer done that? That's a great idea.
They have, Jeff. Google had, I forget the name of it now, Will, but
yes, I remember the one
5 years or so ago.
It bombed terribly.
They ditched the project 2.5 years ago. There were another couple, obviously the likes of Motorola and who's got one now? LG, I think, tried it as well. And there's another one right now, and I've completely forgotten who it is off the top of my head. But a number of manufacturers have experimented with modular systems for phones.
I can imagine that away from hardcore nerds, that must be really hard to market and sell to your average consumer who just don't care.
They're not going to get it.
And also the compromises that come by making a phone that is modular. You know, these things, and if you've ever taken a phone apart, but they're so tightly crammed into those bodies with really precise engineering that making it so you can just snap things in and out, the whole phone can, depending on how you look at it, suffer as a result of that modularity.
What a terrible idea. Yeah.
Anyway, going back to video quality, the other thing I bought when I got my 10R was, I can't actually remember the name of it, but it's a professional ND set for iPhone camera or phone cameras.
And ND, that's neutral density. Why might you want to use a neutral density set of filters, Will?
So the problem generally with cameras is you are limited in terms of how you can stop too much light coming into the camera. So you can change the shutter speed, or you can change the ISO, or you can actually put filters in front of the lens. And those are the three things you can do.
Like sunglasses, but via camera.
And the problem is with something like an iPhone, you don't really have control over the shutter. And what it tends to do is put a very high shutter speed on, which gives it a very kind of TV look. So you lose this motion blur, which gives you a nice cinematic effect. And that's one of the things that makes iPhone footage or cell phone footage stand out as not being from a professional camera. So if you put an ND filter on your camera, you can then basically allow the shutter speed to not be as high in a bright setting.
And it's probably worth saying that when you're using the stock camera app that comes with an iPhone or an iOS device, if you're shooting on your iPad like Jeff does, then you don't really have any visibility of that. That sort of stuff only gets exposed, you know, the shutter rate and the ISO that the camera is enforcing when you're using professional grade apps like Mavis or like Filmic Pro.
Yes, yeah, that gives you full control over that kind of stuff. But just putting an ND on in a bright situation will lower that shutter speed, because that's one of the things it's trying to use to lower the amount of light coming into the camera. And what I found was I was filming in a very bright room. So it was very bright outside, but it wasn't so bright inside. So what I did was put an ND on the camera so that the shutter speed would go down. But because the low light performance of the camera was good, it meant that I didn't lose quality filming inside the room, which was low light versus the bright light outside. So that was a benefit. But one thing that is slightly annoying, and this moves on to the Apple event where they announce the new iPads, which have Face ID and have horizontal Face ID.
I know where you're going.
It's annoying that the 10R does not have horizontal Face ID, because in a gimbal that would really help. But I have found, because it uses you had a Plus phone, didn't you, David?
I did. I had a 6 Plus, which I'm now trading in.
Which does certain things in horizontal mode. So like mail or settings has a horizontal mode rather than just a pure vertical mode. The 10R has certain levels of horizontal modes, which is useful if you've got it locked in a gimbal. So for changing settings, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the home screen doesn't flip to horizontal like the Plus phones did. And again, as I mentioned, no Face ID in horizontal. So hopefully that will come as an update, but who knows?
Interesting. So do you find yourself preferring to have one or the other hand set in your hand? It sounds to me from what you're saying earlier on that from where I was this time last year, of the 10 being the perfect size, that the 10R for you is feeling much more like being the perfect size instead.
I'm spending more time on the 10R, but that could just be because it's new. But it has, because my 6S got so kind of slow, I was tending not to use it.
But why? Why does an old phone get slow? If everyone's saying that, if iOS 12 makes your phone speedy, then why is it getting slow? And if the battery is compromised, then whack in a new battery. Why should performance be diminished over time?
Just as phones get older, the processors are slower. That's just how it is.
No, but it's the same hardware. It's the same phone running at the same speed.
The OS is doing more.
But the initial feedback I heard from 12 is that people were saying, "Oh, it's brought my old phone back to life."
Well, maybe it had, but I wasn't using it enough. I'd been using my 10 more. I was favouring my 10 because that was snappy and responsive. And it may have on 12 picked up. But again, the battery issues, it just wasn't keeping up. So I was favouring my 10. Whereas now I've gone back to doing things on my 10R that I would have done on my 10.
Interesting.
So it's hard to say at the moment which I favour. But I do really like the 10R.
This episode of Frackulous is brought to you by Casper, the company devoted to human sleep. Humans, you are weak. Your frail bodies need to lay down every day for many hours until you are able to function again. To help you address your mortal shortcomings, Casper has engineered the perfect mattress that combines high-density memory and premium latex foams to create a sleep surface that contours to your body and keeps you cool and balanced through the night. Casper removes unnecessary humans in the value exchange process and sells direct, so you get a premium mattress at a fraction of the price. Because you are unable to accurately assess risk, Casper will let you sleep on the mattress for 100 nights, and if you are not satisfied you can return it, and they will even send a fellow human to retrieve it from you for free. Prices start at $500 for a twin and $950 for a king-size mattress. To get $50 towards any mattress purchase, go to frackulous.com/Casper and enter the code 50sleep so that they know that we sent you and to show your support for the show. Terms and conditions apply.
You mentioned the Apple event from a couple of weeks ago now, and while they weren't announcing any new iPhones there was a new MacBook Air and Mac Mini and some new iPads. Jeff, I saw online that you had a play with the new iPads. How did you find them?
Anytime I see an Apple store, I still am drawn in because I just like to make sure that the lack of button and the control center from the bottom is still as awful as it is, and every week it is. And then from a distance, I saw the new iPad, and I was like, oh, that looks good. And you go over to it and you think, oh, it looks really good. And then you pick one up and you're like, oh, it feels really nice. And oh, I like the bezel. And then you turn it on and you're like, oh yeah, there's no button. And I have to swipe up from the bottom. So right until I actually started to use it, I was thinking it looks really good. But it feels extremely fast. It feels extremely, cutting edge, shiny, new. But then, and you know what I'm about to say, because I tweeted about it angrily. Or did I just put it on our Slack? I used the unit with the keyboard on. Because for ages I'm like, oh, do I get one of the keyboards? Because I recently got an iPad Pro with the pencil, ironically just before they brought this new one out. But it looks like I might have bought that at just the right time because it's got a button and a 3.5mm headphone jack. But what really got me with the new iPad is that, well, one, I just instinctively found my thumb was on the side pressing a button that wasn't there. And I'm like, no, where's the button?
Again, I don't think that's Apple's fault per se.
Well, it is because they took away the button. So then I was like, okay, then I'll swipe up.
But they made the screen bigger.
So then I moved my hand down to swipe up. And every time I moved my hand down to then swipe up, it would go, oh, I've hit the keyboard. Oh, I've hit the keyboard. And my hand...
Is there not a shortcut on the keyboard you can do to bring up home?
What? What? You mean what? Turn it into a button?
But I'm just wondering if the keyboard is blocking that, whether there is a keyboard shortcut to do. I don't know. I don't use iPads enough to know that. But I'm just wondering whether naturally, if you had it docked in a keyboard, you would use a keyboard shortcut to do that.
And obviously, and what I didn't say in my tweet Slack is that I can see where they're going. And obviously, and now they're touting it as being faster than all sorts of other devices and computers. And they're just turning it into a laptop by stealth.
I have a different problem with it, Jeff.
They're slowly turning it into a MacBook. Because a MacBook doesn't have one button on the side, or the screen part doesn't. No, you just have a keyboard, and then everything else is just touch. Or what happened next? I was using Vicky's MacBook Pro the other day, and I started touching the screen like an iPad, and she's like, no, it's like no touch screen. So that's where and I was like, yeah, but even my crappy Windows laptop has got I can pinch and zoom. It's got touchscreen, but her MacBook doesn't. So that's where they're headed. Is to make the two the same. And suddenly it dawned on me that's where it was going.
And they're doing that with the applications as well, aren't they? In the latest WWDC and with the latest version of macOS Mojave, there are indeed only a couple really of iOS apps that are running on your Mac desktop. I think it's News, and the other one is Home.
Stocks, don't forget Stocks.
Oh, sorry, I forgot Stocks. I'm sorry.
So could iOS ever replace macOS, or could macOS ever run on an iPad?
Well, no, macOS will never run on an iPad. That's not happening. Definitely.
Could they bring out a hybrid OS which runs on both? Ooh.
I think we are on the move towards iOS being the dominant OS, definitely. But my problem is primarily that I can't run Premiere on an iPad as it is. So if you look at the performance of the iPads, they actually outstrip like the new MacBooks that they've released. So
yeah, but you wouldn't want to anyway until you had full control on that being a mouse. But now it's USB-C. Can you get a USB dongle which allows you to plug a mouse into an iPad?
not yet,
Is that what's coming? A mouse on an iPad?
possibly. But the thing that annoys me is that they've launched the new MacBook Air, but it's only a 13-inch model. So any innovation on anything smaller than that isn't happening. So I'm still using a 11-inch MacBook Air. And I can edit on that. That used to be powerful enough to run Premiere, but they're no longer producing small, powerful laptops.
Because they're producing small, powerful iPads
Yes.
instead. Yeah.
Which is fine
Right.
if Premiere ran on them,
Have you ever thought of using a Windows laptop, Will?
but Premiere Rush just isn't there yet. And I had some more playing around with Premiere Rush, and it's so limited in what it can do. Even some basic keyboard commands don't work. So I was just making a very small GIF to put on Twitter, and I started doing that in Rush to see how easy it was going to be. And I ended up jumping into Premiere proper to do it because it was just getting ridiculous how long it was taking me to make a small loop work. But I mean, some of it's not knowing the new software, but even still, you'd think that it should be fairly easy to pick up and use. But for anyone that knows Premiere, Rush is hard.
What about a hybrid device in the same way that you used to have, say, Parallels, or still do? You could boot into Windows or Mac. You have a hybrid tablet which you can either boot as a fully functioning Mac OS or you boot into iPad mode. How about that? How about that for an idea?
I mean, the Windows thing was a little bit of it was a way of getting people that were scared, like me, that were scared of not having Windows, to own a MacBook. So I dual booted, and then I found actually I was spending more time in Mac OS, so I had Parallels, so I ran a copy of that. And then it turned out the only thing I was still running was Office in Parallels. And then I was like, I might as well just buy Office for the Mac and stop booting Parallels. For anyone that didn't know, Parallels was a way of running Windows within your OS 10 installations.
Still is.
And it still is. A quick question, Will, on that very point. When I first started working with you, what was it, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, whenever it was, I remember very clearly, you must have been relatively new to the Mac then.
It was 2006 I got my first Mac.
Oh, okay. You still had, when I was working with you back in 2011, whenever it was, you'd modified your keyboard mapping.
Oh yeah, I'm still on my Windows keyboard shortcuts. Yes.
So here we are, 12 years after moving across, you're still using a Windows keyboard layout on your Macs.
I had Control S. I have to use Control S to save stuff.
Yeah, so you do the thing where you replace Command with Control, right?
Yeah, I swap Command and Control around, which I would say to anyone coming from Windows, that's the first thing you should do.
Does Mac Sierra Mountain Tiger Line, whatever it is, do you have to turn on right click, or is it now on by default?
Oh, I don't know. I've only ever upgraded through the ways, so
Same
Right.
here, yeah.
so I have it on. But the other thing they announced was the new Mac Mini.
Yeah.
I'm quite excited about that.
Are you? Why?
Because you've got a big heavy door, and finally it'll keep it open, right? Okay.
Well,
I've got a first generation Apple TV for that.
My 2013 MacBook Pro is getting a bit slow for editing 4K stuff, that kind of thing.
It wasn't built for that, really, was it?
It wasn't built for that, but it can just about do it. I'm actually doing more and more kind of... Originally, we used to edit on-site. We're doing less of that. We're doing more kind of editing off-site. And actually, it'd be a good stopgap. I'm quite happy with the displays I've got here. It was quite a good stopgap machine to fill in, get me a performance boost. And so that's something I'd be interested in, possibly. But again, it depends. And then I think they've been quite good on the specs. They go from very low to very high. And people have been complaining about how much you can pay for one, but at least there is that option there. How about you, David?
Yeah.
Are you tempted by anything they announced?
Not really. I mean, speaking of old kit, I've got a 2010 27-inch iMac in front of me, which is 8 years old and still goes like an absolute beast. I did spec it to the max when I bought it all those years ago. And yes, it's not a Retina display, but it's absolutely fine. Admittedly, I'm not editing in 4K. You know, I do 1080p multicam from time to time in here, but generally speaking, for 4K, I suspect this wouldn't really wouldn't really do it for me. But as to whether anything at the Apple event would work for me, I don't know. The MacBook Air isn't necessarily where I'm at. I've still got a MacBook Pro, 13-inch MacBook Pro. I don't think that would be an upgrade for me necessarily. Mac Mini, no, I've got my iMac, that's fine. And an iPad Pro, well, I don't know. I was secretly hoping that Apple might announce a iPad Mini equivalent, iPad Mini Air or something, but of course they didn't. I don't think that was really ever on the cards.
They have mentioned the iPad Mini though.
Oh, have they? I must have missed that. Go on, tell me more.
Like they've kind of not said we're doing anything with it, but they have said it exists.
Okay.
I mean, my problem with the iPad is I just don't have enough of a use case for it between a phone and a laptop. Anything, I could do editing on my laptop and I can do stuff on my phone, and I would just be duplicating tasks between this spot in the middle, which it just seems there's no need. It's one more thing to carry, it's one more thing to charge, it's one more thing to buy.
I'm with you there.
I got the first ever iPad back in 2010. I got a 64 gig cellular iPad, and it's on my kitchen table right now, and we're going to trade it in.
What IS did it go up to, David? 6? Did it make 6?
No, 5.1.1, I believe. Only reason I think that's right is because I restored it from scratch today, so it's nice and clean.
It's got the original non-rotatable Google Maps app.
I can't say I checked today, and it's been a long time since I've used it properly. But I mean, I have to say, it was really slick, really swish when I powered it back on again and restored the OS, and I thought, well, I'll just stick a SIM in it and give it one more whirl just for old time's sake before I pass it on. And I'm going to miss it. And, you know, Jeff, you talk about how Apple's changed over the years and all of that, but this device feels solid and feels industrial in a way that Apple kit rarely feels these days.
So just for nostalgia's sake, why aren't you keeping it then? Just for nostalgia, why don't you keep it?
Because I've been keeping it for nostalgia's sake for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's mostly sat in a cupboard not doing anything.
Yeah, so put it back in the cupboard, and in 5 years' time you can just have the joy of discovering it all over again.
Or I could get best part of £100 for it, and do something more useful instead.
Going back to that industrial design you said, David, about being sturdy, the only iPhone I've dropped on a pavement was my original iPhone. And it just dinked. That was it. We got a small dink by the headphone socket, but nothing smashed, nothing broke.
Yeah.
And I think now, if you drop any of the current generation of iPhones onto a pavement, 1 or 2 of those sides are going to smash.
So, Will, clearly you need to do an iPhone iPhone XR drop test.
10R.
10R. What? Whatever it is. Hey, Will, your new phone. Try dropping it. See what happens. Let us know next.
I really don't want to. That's the other good thing about. So my 10 is in a case, and I do find if I'm out and about, I will definitely favour the 10. I don't really want to take the 10R out my pocket outside where there isn't a soft landing.
I tell you what I did do today when I went to the Apple store to pick up my wife's phone. I did pick up a new case for my 10, and I got the red silicone case, and I've got it in my hands now, and I have to say it feels like a brand new phone again. Very happy indeed.
I have actually got a great tip for anyone, for the listener who wants a phone case, because Apple clearly only, to try and force you to buy new phones, only have cases for the latest models.
Well, they just stock ones for the latest models, don't they?
Yeah, so they don't stock them. So you definitely can't get a case for the 6. I don't think you can get cases anymore.
But you can find them on eBay. I bought a 6S case recently on eBay.
So today I found the place, and the minute I say it makes sense. But I was in a big branch of Tesco, which had like a tech aisle, and of course it had cases going back to iPhone 6. None for the 10, but loads for the 6 and 7. Maybe none even for the 8. So like Tesco is about 2 years behind, and it's got like a huge variety of colours and sizes of all different cases. And I was like, oh, this is where to come to get cases that are 5 years old at Tesco. Good. I'm glad that one worked. Edit that one out, Will.
No, I liked it. I'm leaving that in. But I'm just wary of time.
Hey, talking of time, how do you know what time it is, Will? How do you tell the time?
I use a watch, Jeff.
Amazing. Seamless
Well.
link.
This episode of Frackulous is brought to you by FreshBooks, the easy-to-use online invoicing software designed to get you paid cash money faster. Face it, humans, you are not good with numbers. If you're not a numbers human, sign up for FreshBooks and let them handle the hard stuff for you. FreshBooks users save 2 days per month on average, which you could spend doing futile tasks like talking to other humans and eating food in front of each other. In order to pay for these pointless activities, you are going to need money. FreshBooks lets you create invoices that look more professional than your substandard motor skills allow. You can even keep track of expenses, so you don't end up with negative money. Which is bad if your entire world is built on having it to survive. To try FreshBooks for free for 30 days, go to frackulous.com/freshbooks and enter Frackulous into the How Did You Hear About Us section, so that they know that we sent you and to show your support for the show.
Seamless.
So do I, and for the last, a month or so, I think I've been spotting the brand new Apple Watch Series 4. Woo!
So you dove in, got the new one.
I dived in, got the new one, both my Apple Watch Series 0 or original, both mine and my wife's are both also up to be traded in.
David, has it got a button? Or do you have to swipe up from the bottom? Sorry.
You broke one, didn't you, David? I knew you didn't break it, you had water damaged.
Yeah, I did water damage my first one and had to get a refurbish.
And that was pre-Series 2.
Yeah, and I got the Series 0, the original one, back again as part of the refurb. Because I think I did it at just the worst time of year as well, just before the new ones would have been announced. But anyway, so I've been on the Apple Watch Series 4 Cellular for just about a month now, and I have to say it feels like an entirely new, well, obviously it's an entirely new watch, but it does feel very much like a new experience.
I had a go of my friend's Matt, and he was saying it's good, and even I was thinking this is quite nice. It's still not enough to make me want to get one, but all the reviews are saying they're really good, and I have to agree.
So what do you get that you don't get over a Series 0?
Okay, so first thing is the screen. The form factor of the watch is immediately larger. It's a 44 versus a 42-inch watch. But also the screen goes edge to edge, just like the phones do nowadays. This goes much, much, much larger. And what that enables is a lot more screen estate for different watch faces, which have been great. Even though the watch is larger, it doesn't feel too much larger. It feels about the same, but only when you kind of put them on your wrist side by side.
So you went from 42 to 44. You weren't tempted to go for the 40?
No, I wanted slightly larger, and I've definitely enjoyed that. I don't know whether it's a little bit thinner. I think it might just be a little bit thinner where it matters. It just feels a bit more natural. But really, the Series 0, and I think you're still an original Apple Watch user.
I am.
It was barely functioning for me anymore. I was very patient with it, and I was giving it a lot of time to do stuff, but it was slow, unresponsive, just didn't really do the stuff that I wanted it to. And slowly, it was just starting to diminish my my respect for it. This thing now, it just zips along, apps and all, and it's an absolute joy to wear. Battery life. When these things first came out, it was a big concern that they wouldn't last through the day. I've got 2 days out of this, and I've certainly, when I was away I was away overnight, and I forgot to bring an Apple Watch charger with me. Schoolboy error. The classic. I now have one in my grab bag, of course.
I do now, from when I forgot to bring one and had to buy one at an airport.
And they aren't cheap. They aren't cheap
No.
either, these blooming chargers. Anyway, so it's lasted me from morning, overnight through to the following evening. What else? Cellular. Now, this is the bit I'm not so sure about.
Hang on, your phone has got cellular. Your watch.
My watch has got cellular.
What? No way. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah,
What?
so this came in a couple of generations ago now.
Series
What?
3 it came in.
Series 3, yeah, okay, so the last generation
How
before
can they
this
fit
one.
that all into a watch? That's amazing.
It's magic. It's absolute magic. So it's got an eSIM in there, And when it first launched in the UK, it was just the one network, EE, over here that would support it. And I think that was as much an infrastructure thing as just the single supplier thing that we had with Apple, with the iPhone originally, when it was just at O2 for the first generation. I'm with Vodafone, and when the Apple Watch Series 4 was announced, Vodafone was also announced as a partner. So I thought, well, you know what? I may as well give it a go. This thing came out around about my birthday, so I thought, I know what? I'll treat myself. So I did. And I have to say, the onboarding process with Vodafone was a bit of a faff. You have to pay a bit extra, £5 a month. £5 a month with Vodafone, but the first 6 months or so is free with it.
I think EE does a similar deal, doesn't it?
I can't remember what the EE deal was. I think it was about the same sort of magnitude, to be honest with you.
Okay, can I ask a dumb question then? So how close is it, your watch, to being a phone replacement then? Bearing in mind that when I go out, I use my phone for just 4 things. So 1, I'll do messaging. 2, I'll listen to music. 3, I'll browse the web. And 4, I'll look at Twitter. Now, if there's a Twitter app on your watch and you can listen and you can connect to Bluetooth, your CyberPods, and you could dictate via Siri text messages, could I survive on just using a watch and not take my phone when I go out with me?
Well, this is the question that I'm asking at the moment, Jeff. I have to say, I'm not sure what value I've actually got from cellular yet, because I do tend to carry my phone about with me whenever I go out. Running is the often cited use case for this. So you don't have to have a phone clunking about in your pocket or strapped to your arm. You can stick your Bluetooth headphones in, sync those, pair those with your watch, and still have pretty much full phone call connectivity, text message connectivity, Siri, as well as with music. But I don't really go running very often. I do a lot of walking and I do a lot of other sports, but I haven't really found any situation in the last couple of weeks or so since I've had the cellular enabled where I've been grateful to have the cellular enabled, because the rest of the time it just connects via my phone or via Wi-Fi, and it just does what it does anyway. So I'm not entirely sure, a month or so in, that I'll be renewing the cellular bit of this in 6 months' time.
Do you think you're getting £5 worth of value?
Well, so with Vodafone, £5 a month, the first 6 months are free. So after that first 6 months or so, I'm going to make a bit of a call as to whether it's worthwhile doing or not, because at the moment it's not.
I guess you will at least know by then. That's a good amount of data, 6 months worth.
I mean, I might just have to start running. I don't know.
Hey,
but overall...
Join me.
Yeah, I'll join you, Jeff. I think we do have a park run, or maybe 2.
I'm looking up now. I'm looking up Leicestershire park runs. I'm not kidding. I really am.
There is one in Loughborough, I think, mostly
them up.
Loughborough University students, I'm sure. So all in all, although it was...
There's one called Leicester Victoria, and there's one in Braunston. There you go, Braunston,
yes.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I couldn't have done that myself.
Shut up.
So have you put any podcasts on it yet, or anything like that? Some of the new features?
Yes. And can you play them at 2 times speed?
No, I haven't. Because I do it all through my phone, and I've got my phone with me. I mean, what I do, which I could do and did do to a less degree with my old Apple Watch, is control the shit out of everything I do from my Apple Watch. Oh, and here's something I have found myself doing, and I know we're kind of creeping into productivity here, but it's something that I found myself doing so much more with this watch than I ever did before. The complications, the little apps essentially that you can have on your watch face. The one that I use more than any other during the course of my day is the timer. And I will set timers for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes in my custom timers, just so that I've got a track as to how long things are taking during my day. Because particularly when I'm writing, which is a large part of my job, I can go down rabbit warrens and go down holes. And before I know it, an hour and a half is gone. And I've been, just interested in something without actually being productive, or at least not productive in the way I'm supposed to be being productive. So just setting a little timer for 5 or 20 minutes, kind of Pomodoro styling, on my watch, it's a no-brainer to do, and it just keeps me strict. It helps me to realise how much time I'm spending on particular activities. Just give me that little tap on the shoulder or on the wrist so that I can keep myself true to whatever schedule it is that I'm trying to keep. That has been something that I found myself doing as part of my daily ritual, my daily routine now, and I think I'm a lot more productive for it. Could I have done that on my old Apple Watch? Yeah, I guess so. But this one, because of all the reasons that I've just spoken about, is so much a nicer device to use. I just kind of want to use this a little bit more. And the timer is one way, and that's manifesting itself, which is certainly benefiting me and my life at the moment.
I mean, I've found there are 3 things I use my Apple Watch for.
And they are?
They are setting timers. So I use timers all the time on the watch.
Do you just, hey Siri, set a timer? You just talk to your watch.
I literally have on the side button, I click it, it's one of the first or second docked items, and then I just hit the screen to run. So if I'm putting on some washing, I know it's going to take 2.5 hours to do both washing machines, and I'll just set that going and then pop down in 2.5 hours when it's done. And I'll also have a timer set when I have to go and pick up the kids from school, so I'll make sure I never forget to get the kids.
Why don't you just have a daily alarm set on your phone?
It's very discreet. It just vibrates my wrist, so I don't have to have my phone with me or get it out of my pocket to acknowledge that timer. I just find it very useful for those kind of alerts I must not miss. It's very useful for that. I've started using it again to do volume on my podcasts.
Yep.
And that's one thing I missed, because my watch was paired with what was my 6S, became my 10R. It wasn't paired with my 10. And I did miss that functionality, so it's good to have that back. And then the biggest thing for me is unlocking my Macs. So when they released the previous iOS, the Watch OS update, it included a facility to unlock your Mac if your watch is unlocked. Instead of having to enter the password on your Mac, it just talks to your watch. If your watch is already authenticated, it unlocks your machine for you.
Is that a Bluetooth thing?
It's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and proximity. It's various things.
How does your watch know how close it is to your Mac?
It does something. I think it times how long it takes for a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi message to get to it. So it's literally, they've worked it out. So you can't just be in the same room and someone can unlock your Mac. You have to be sat
that's what I'm
at
thinking.
it.
Yeah.
Apparently there is a proximity element to it. Obviously, I don't have that problem because
that's quite clever.
That is really good, and I really wish that this could extend to things like 1Password on my Mac.
Oh, yes.
Because obviously I've got, on my phone, I've got Face ID, so that's really frictionless access to 1Password. But on my Mac, I still have to enter that really long passphrase. And if that could be enabled from my watch...
Which is what, Will?
It's very long, and I'm not going to give it out right now.
Subscribe to the Frackulous Patreon to find out Will's password.
Yeah. You know, when I used to talk about wearable tech, you talk about applications that there are 3 things that these wearable devices, that watches are good for. It's applications, notification, and quantification. And of course, you know, this thing still taps me on the shoulder if I've not been standing up for an hour or so.
Well, I have actually turned that off.
Okay.
Because obviously I'm in recovery from pneumonia, so I don't want it tapping me.
Oh God, I didn't even ask how you are. Are you okay? How are you? Are you?
This is one thing that does annoy me about the whole exercise and activity rings. Is there's no way to say I'm actually not meant to be active at the moment, so can you just chill out?
Yeah,
interesting.
You can't take a holiday.
You can't just say I'm not in a state where I can hit my rings for the next few weeks, so let's just put it on pause. You have to look at your decimated performance.
Sorry, I still want to make some kind of like illness through hemorrhoid related gag because of rings. I need to make that.
It's the opposite of the encouragement. It does encourage you to be active and do things, but I think in situations where you shouldn't be, it can have a negative effect. And I think they need to address that aspect of it slightly. I mean, I'm not bothered about not getting my stand goal, and I might probably leave it off now. I don't know.
Can I tell you about my watch then?
I was just going to say one more thing about my watch. So
yeah,
I'm probably not upgrading now. The only thing I would like is better battery life. But I have heard that because the Series 0 is so old, if you get a battery replaced on it, they might send you a Series 1 or a Series 2. So I might just see what happens if I do that.
Oh, yeah.
For the amount I use it, I don't think I want to pay any more money for one. But I do like it as it is. The only thing I'd want to improve is the battery life. So I may send it in for a battery replacement and see what happens. But then I also kind of want to keep the original, so it can go next to my original iPhone. So,
would you like to buy an original iPad, Will?
No.
Before
£100
it goes from the kitchen table. Yeah. Make me an offer.
For some reason, iPads don't go into my museum. But yeah, I have to draw a line somewhere. Anyway, Jeff, have you got a watch?
Hang on, could I have like a bigger build-up? Maybe like a virtual fanfare or something.
Okay. Jeff, have you got a watch?
I'll do a drum roll. Here we go. You're listening to the Frackulous podcast. If you're a new listener to Frackulous podcast, you may think that we exclusively talk about Apple products. We have done for the first half an hour on this podcast. So I can reveal to you now, listener, that this is where we talk about a non-Apple product.
What?
A non-Apple product.
Do they exist?
I'm going to say it loudly. A
Get out
non-Apple
of my podcast.
So I have a watch that isn't an Apple Watch.
How do you live?
So what have you got, Jeff? Tell all.
About 5 years ago, when I got really into parkrun, if anyone that doesn't know, I'm a huge parkrun obsessive. Probably more than I like trains, actually, which is a bit weird. So
Wow.
yeah.
Why don't you have a parkrun YouTube channel?
There are parkrun videos on my YouTube channel. I'm in the middle of making another one at the moment, but it's taken me a year to make because I'm recording a bit
Year in
each
the
week.
making.
It is. No, literally, it's a year in the making. But Vicky got me a Garmin watch just so that then, because it was GPS, so that it tracked your proper time and kilometers run and that kind of stuff. And back in the summer, it died. It had a built-in, I'm assuming, a non-replaceable battery, and it was my birthday. And so we went down the shop and I bought a new watch, and I was like, let's just get the cheapest Garmin watch again. So I got a Garmin Forerunner 35, and predominantly all I wanted it for was for it to like sit when you got back to charge it. It just uploads to Garmin, and then that produces a pretty graph and showed you where you've run. You can plot it and see what your split times are. But then it went, hey, you should probably download the app for your phone. And I was like, oh, what's this? So it's a Garmin Forerunner 35. And the thing is, even the most basic Garmin model now does so much more than just like tell you how fast you've run. And basically, I get notifications on my watch, and I didn't even ask it to. It went, oh, you appear to have a watch. Do you want to connect? I'm like, sure.
But you enabled that. The man who hates notifications thought,
well,
I know
exactly.
what I need. I need more notifications on my wrist.
But this is it. But because it wasn't Apple, I thought I'd try it. Now, and I downloaded the app, and the Garmin running app is like monstrously complicated. And after about 5 minutes of searching, I drilled down and I found the section where, annoyingly, notifications is either phone calls, yes or no, and all other notifications, yes or no. That's the only thing you can. And then there's another option for get notifications all the time or not when you're running. So when you're running and it knows you're running, then it doesn't give you any notifications at all. So I have that turned on. So I don't get notified when I'm running, but I do get notified of everything else. And then basically I just chop down on notifications, as you know, on my phone. So I do get text messages, I do get iMessages on my watch. And I have to say, I quite like it when you're out. When you're out and about and your phone's in your pocket or your bag and your watch just goes bzz, and you glance, you're like, oh, okay. Because you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket anymore.
Yes.
So because you can decide whether you need to respond to that message or not.
And I was like, oh no, damn it, I quite like it. What's weird is that it can't handle any emojis or any kind of strange graphics. It only handles text.
So does it put like a square, a block in or something?
Yeah, you get
or a question
you get all
mark.
of that.
Like what happens? How do emojis show on the watch?
Oh, nothing. There's just an unintelligible blob of squares and stuff. And I'm just like emoji time. Or weirdly, YouTube notifications don't really work because I have YouTube. The only other notifications I have turned on my phone are for certain YouTube channels that I subscribe to. That's how much I love YouTube.
Hit the bell. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Smash the bell. And when a YouTube notification comes through on my watch, you can't really decipher it. It looks undecipherable, but it just makes me think, oh, there's a new YouTube video to watch. But then you can answer your phone from your watch. So this is what I often always do. I quite often have my watch on at home, and my phone I've just like discarded somewhere in the house, right? I literally come in and it could be in the kitchen, could be the lounge, could be in the bathroom where I've been checking Twitter on the toilet.
Bit of loose surfing there. Well done.
We all do surf. So now what happens, my phone rings and my watch buzzes. And now, instead of having to panic and go, where's my phone? I just answer it on my watch. And then I've got a few more added seconds of the person going, hello, 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 as I then try and find my phone in the house.
So you can't take calls on it?
No, but you can accept calls on it, which I really like. It's like, sure, I'll just answer the call on my watch.
But you can't talk into the watch?
No. Because
you can pick up, basically.
Yeah. And I like it. So I do like some notifications on my watch. There, I said it.
The thing is, Jeff, is that, I know you and I have our run-ins, and sometimes you do sound like, someone who does want to be locked up in a cave. Where your head's at, I feel as though I can understand where your head's at, but how you've just described to me your experience of having a wearable and getting some notifications, what that highlights for me is the difference between kind of thinking that something's going to be a bit and then actually experiencing it and going, oh, actually, that is kind of useful, that I can get the benefits of it. When you rationalise it and intellectualise it, you think, no, I must not like this. But then only when you experience it do you kind of get it. It's like Facebook. It's like social media as a whole. 10 years ago, the whole idea of Facebook was just foreign to me.
What is it's because I see an Apple Watch and I see it, it's big and it's colourful. My Garmin Forerunner is only black, it's only monochrome, by the way. You see a big colourful Apple Watch and you see it just like 10,000 things, and so you're overwhelmed with thinking, oh, I have to do this and download apps for it and sync it and blah 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 blah. And when you just have a very simple watch and I just use it for a clock running and then some notifications, I'm like, yeah, that's okay.
I mean, that's essentially what I use mine for, Jeff. And now you've mentioned notifications, I've realised that actually that is one of the key things I use my watch for, but it's become so natural I forgot that that's where a lot of my notifications go, is via my wrist.
Oh, sorry, I just thought of something else. But I was warmed up to it because Vicky also has a Fitbit, and when she remembers to charge it, which is rarely, she'll sometimes be in bed and her Fitbit will buzz. And I'll be like, what's that? She's like, iMessage. I'm like, oh. And I remember thinking, yeah, I kind of want iMessage on my wrist. But I didn't want to be deluged with notifications. So what I do is, I turn off everything on my phone, and then you only get that I don't want, and then I'm in control. It's fine.
Speaking of notifications,
I have screen time data now, by the way.
Well, I was just going to go exactly down that line because I've just opened up screen time.
And back to Apple,
on
everyone.
my
The
phone.
non-Apple segment is over. Back to Apple.
Okay, so screen time. For me, nil point. I appear to have lost all of my screen time data.
Oh, really?
And as I open it up right now, there is nothing there.
We still can't compare screen time.
Hang on. Boys, I'll be right back. I'm going to grab my iPad so I can look at my screen time data. Hang on.
Will, what's your screen time?
So across all my devices, over the last 7 days, which is all I'm allowed to see, I use my device for 6 hours, 41 minutes a day.
6 hours and 41 minutes a day. Does sat-nav count in any of that?
It does. I've done 5 hours of sat-nav over the past week.
Yeah, you see, I think that's a bit edgy. I don't know that should be included. That for me, that's like listening to podcasts, where you're busy doing another activity perhaps.
Well, it says overcast 1 hour, 12 minutes on screen. But if I go into the battery stats... So battery stats, it says overcast, I have used over the last 10 days, 25 hours.
That's more like it, isn't it?
I'm looking at my screen time thing right now. What would you like to know? Go.
What's your usage time?
Last 7 days, 31 minutes a day I've been using my iPad.
Okay.
Over 4.5 hours is on entertainment. 3 hours, 1 minute on TV, because basically I use my iPad as a mobile TV, and just over an hour on Tweetbot, and then an hour on YouTube, which is correct. So, it's just gone up to 32 minutes a day, because obviously I'm on my iPad now. So,
well, who knows? Maybe next time we'll be able to get some proper comparative stats on this when all three of our devices are working in tandem.
Do you want to know what my Instagram notifications have been this week?
Oh, yeah, do tell.
3,321.
What?
And that is because you've, with the How to Mobile Photo and also with your own channel now.
Yeah, on my own channel.
Some really impressive stats going on there.
So I've been promoting... Oh, I almost dropped my phone. Haven't got a case on it.
The 10 or the R?
It's fine.
10 or the R?
The 10R.
The 10R. What? Oh.
So I've been promoting some posts on the How to Mobile Photo Instagram, and they were getting some good likes. We were doing quite well. And then I had a call with Facebook, and they showed me how to basically create an audience that is similar to the people that have already interacted with your account. And then once I put that on, it just went crazy. We were getting kind of 1,000 likes a day on a photo.
What? So you built a custom advert geared towards certain people?
Yeah, and it's incredibly creepy, but it works incredibly well.
Is this just based upon demographic, or
yeah?
how
So they're
do you
looking
drill
at,
in?
they're going, these people liked your photos before, and then they look for people like that haven't seen your photos, and they then put them in front of those people. And it turns out they also like the photos.
Yeah, what do you know? So are you able to identify that audience by yourself, or was this only because you had a call with Facebook and they were able to give you those stats on your existing posts?
No, they showed me how to do it. It's something anybody can do. And it's incredible. Well, it's not incredibly simple because you have to go into Facebook Ads Manager, which is horrific and probably one of the least intuitive things to use in the world ever. But if you have someone on the phone to walk you through, it's a bit like trying to land a plane. If they walk you through it, you can successfully achieve this one thing.
So even though it's Instagram, you still have to go into Facebook Ads Manager in order to build up that profile.
I originally started trying to promote them on the Facebook platform, and I was just like, I gave up. I couldn't work it out. Whereas Instagram, you can just go promote this audience, this much money, go.
And how much money are we talking about here? I mean, are we talking about tens and hundreds of pounds to get a post promoted, or something less?
We're talking like £1 a day for, I think we were doing them over 6 days. So
That's all right.
because I then couldn't resist it, I promoted a post on my own Instagram. I started it running yesterday, and so far today, I have had 1,335 likes on that image, and it's cost me, I think it's cost me 63 pence so far.
And this post, is there any indication? Does it show up as a promoted post like one on Facebook might?
It will appear in other people's stream basically as a promoted post.
Okay, so it's obvious that this is a promoted post. There's no, kind of smoke and mirrors here.
No, it's clearly promoted. But yeah, it's just interesting that for a very little amount of money, you can get a lot of likes on your photos. If that's the sort of thing you want. Which apparently I do.
Yes, it would appear to be so, Will.
Yes.
End of Frackulous. If your puny human minds can handle more, then follow on Twitter. @FRACKULOUS or individually. @David McClelland. DAVIDMCCLELLAND. @Jeff Tech. GEOFFTECH. @Will Head. WILLHEAD. Email your brains to hello@frackulous.com. I wanna see the sunshine after the rain. I wanna see blue birds flying over the mountains again.
Earlier on, Jeff, you were talking about how your emoji don't come through on your Garmin watch. I've also found the same to be true in a slightly different way on Apple CarPlay. I mentioned that I've been having a play with Apple CarPlay recently, and when Siri tries to dictate iMessages to me, it describes the emoji instead in full text, including skin color.
Is this just the latest version? Because with 12.1, they brought in like 80 new emojis, or is it ones prior to that?
I noticed this first about a month or so ago, and yeah, I just remember yellow skin thumbs up emoji and things like that, which tickled me muchly until I started getting messages with lots and lots of emoji, and each one took about 2 minutes to read.
But why hasn't CarPlay updated itself so that it can cope with the latest and greatest? Still on Apple, by the way.
Well, David, talking about CarPlay, do you have a new CarPlay experience you can tell us about?
I have a new car experience that I can tell you about, and it arrived at 7 a.m. on Friday morning after about 3 or 4 months waiting for it to be built. I have an electric car, guys. I feel very much a member of the 21st century.
What? Hang on. Is it made by Apple?
Is it the Apple car?
It is not.
We have
the
another
iCar.
non-Apple moment on the podcast. Another non-Apple moment on the podcast. Go, David, with your non-Apple tech.
Thank you very much indeed. So yes, I have a BMW i3. I'm probably the least BMW driver I know that owns a BMW.
Does it come with indicators, or is that optional?
And also, I want to say, how the heck can you afford that? But we already know that you're selling your old iPad for £100, so that's how.
Exactly. So yeah, I've been interested in living the electric revolution for a little while. I've been waiting for the right car to come along and for the right time for me to get one, and the time is now.
So I'm not fully up on electric cars. I know there are Teslas.
Yes,
I know there are Priuses, which have a degree of electricness.
Yes, a hybrid. Yes, indeed.
And where does the BMW i3 fall?
That's a
in
full-on
that
electric.
range?
Yes. Okay. So, as you point out, there are different types of electrification. There are vehicles which are hybrid, plug-in hybrids, where there's a degree of traditional internal combustion engine that's being assisted one way or another. There's a plug-in hybrid. There's a mild hybrid, an MHEV.
A mild hybrid.
A mild hybrid where the electric provides a mild amount of help and so on. And then there are what's called BEVs, which are battery electric vehicles, and they are up against the ICEs, the internal combustion engine. So there's lots of acronyms flying around in this language now. But I have a BEV with a Rex. So I know it's great, isn't it?
Have you seen a doctor?
So I probably should do. So a BEV, fully battery electric vehicle. The motor, the drivetrain, the thing that moves the car is fully electric. And that's where you are reliant on a battery, a big lithium-ion battery, lots of cells of those stuck somewhere, hopefully quite safely in the car. In the BMW i3 that I've got 94 amp hour battery capability in there, which in theory gives me a range of about 120 miles or so, depending upon whether I have such luxuries as headlights, indicators, radio, heating, windscreen wipers on in the car. So it varies. And of course, because it's electric, you've got the opportunity to claim some of that back when you use your brake. You drive an electric car slightly differently in that you try not to use your brake. You take your foot, or at least with this one, you take your foot off the accelerator. Regenerative braking kicks in and will charge the battery, the same as many hybrid vehicles do as well. What's different about this BMW, and I think it's about the only vehicle in the UK, or the only car in the UK that did this until recently, is that it's also got a petrol engine in there as well. It's got essentially, to all intents and purposes, a lawnmower engine that's got quite a small tank of fuel that goes with it. And when that runs, all it does is recharge the battery. So it's called a range extender because all it's really doing is giving you an extra 60, 70, 80 miles maybe worth of range in case you are stuck between charging locations.
And can you run that while you're driving, or do you have to stop?
No, it's seamless. It all happens in the background, and when you're running low on battery, then the car will kick in the petrol engine just to keep the battery up to a healthy level.
So it doesn't drive the wheels; it just recharges the battery.
All it does is to recharge the battery. And we're seeing this technology being used not only in cars, but also in things like transit vans driving around London and so on, so that they can operate in fully electric mode when they're in congestion zone and low emission zones, or around schools. You know, there's geofencing and all that sort of stuff. And then when they are doing the longer haul journeys, then the petrol engine can kick in and just charge that battery. It's seen as being a pretty economical way of doing it. But BMW's now stopped making this model. I had one of the last models off the production line.
What are they making instead now then?
All battery. They've ditched the range extender in Europe, and they've just announced a 2019 model of the car that I've just received. That's got a larger battery that takes you, I think it's 160 miles. And what they say, or what the PR team says, and Will, actually, I think you may have helped me out with this. I think we engaged Rory Reid.
Good old Rory Reid.
On Twitter, and hi Rory, if you're listening. He got in touch with one of the BMW PRs who confirmed pretty much on the day that this all happened that because the battery range has now been extended, they're saying, yeah, you don't really need this range extender thing, not in the UK.
So how much extra range does the petrol bit get you?
In theory, I think it's 60, 70, 80 miles or thereabouts.
Okay.
So certainly enough. And overall, from this car, I think I can get about 180 or so miles were I fully charged and fully petroled up. And another reason why this gives me a nice comfy feeling, and I'm not going to be suffering from the range anxiety that I might have otherwise, is that I'm learning about how long it takes to recharge an electric car and the different types of charging available. And oh boy, is that a can of worms.
What's the furthest you've taken it, David, sort of not knowing when you're going to get your next top up? How much of a daredevil have you been?
I got this on Friday morning at 7 a.m. and I didn't drive it until yesterday at about 9:30. So I've done a couple of trips. And
David, is that because you had to have it charging? You had to charge it up over that time?
Thankfully not. It did arrive fully charged.
So it's like an iPhone. It arrives with some charge in it.
Yeah, David, is it possible to buy a car case that wraps around your car to give you an additional charge?
Sadly not.
Like Mophie should make a roof rack, which with an hour's extra.
Yeah, you say that, but the extra weight that would give to your car would probably remove any of the benefit whatsoever. Right. The same as I know, Will, you do with your phone and with your laptop. Whenever you've got a chance to charge it, you do. So in the city centre in Leicester, where I travelled to earlier today, for example, to go and pick up my wife's 10R, I parked it in the local car park. There's a John Lewis there with a multi-storey car park and free electric charging. So I just park the car, plug it in.
It's very John Lewis, isn't it? Free electric charging.
So you have yet to experience range anxiety, which is what the phrase is. That is the phrase.
It is
that is the
indeed
actual phrase. Yeah.
So I just go shopping for a couple of hours, charge up my car, and I did the same thing yesterday morning actually as well. And in about the 2 or 3 hours that I was in town doing a few errands and doing some stuff with the kids, by the time I came back, I have essentially given myself a day and a half's worth of trips worth of charge for free. I must have given it an extra 20, 30 miles or something like that, completely free of charge. So that kind of felt good, although I was paying for the parking.
Was there much demand for these spaces?
Aha. So remember I mentioned earlier on that there are some terms for cars like BEVs and ICEs and so on. When there is a horrible or gas guzzling car parked in one of the parking bays for an electric vehicle,
you're legally allowed to block it in.
Well, block it in. It's there is a term for that, and it's called being iced. I guess the thing is that there aren't very many parking bays with charging points comparatively to normal parking bays. So it is one of the most frustrating things in the world if you can't charge up your car because a petrol gas guzzler car is parked in that bay.
It wasn't really that, because obviously there are always people that are going to park in them when they shouldn't. It's more... I remember when they introduced online check-in with airlines, and if you used the internet a lot, you did that and you didn't have to queue because everyone else was still queuing and they weren't aware of it. And now everywhere has online check-in and you still have to queue. So are you kind of living in a time where there are more electric charging spots in car parks than there are electric cars? And are you having this golden age, and once everyone else has electric cars, it's going to be a nightmare and there's going to be no spots? Or do you think it's going to keep up?
A couple of stats for you. It is around 80% of charging at the moment, as I understand it, takes place at home.
Right.
So that's where most people do their charging on their vehicles. From my experience, not being in London, and I can count on one hand the number of electric vehicles that I've seen here in Leicestershire, where I live.
Well, how do you know? How can you tell if it's an electric car or not?
You can't hear it for us.
Yeah. Because I know what a BMW i3 looks like. I know what a Renault Zoe, what a Nissan Leaf. I know what the standard kind of electric cars tend to look like. Yes, there are some hybrids which are a little bit more difficult to tell, but there aren't that many of them around. And certainly, based on my local car parks here in Leicester and in Loughborough, there is no shortage of parking bays at the moment. Now, I was in a black cab in London a couple of weeks ago, and from January 2018, as I understand it, all new black cabs, London taxis that hit the streets, have to be electric vehicles. And so over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, however long it takes for vehicles that are already on the road, diesel vehicles, to go through their lease, new ones are going to be electric vehicles. That means that all the taxi stock in London's going to be electric. They're going to need charging. And chatting with a cab driver, he was saying that at the moment he can get through about 2/3 of his shift on one charge. Then he needs to stop for half an hour or 45 minutes, have a cup of tea, find a rapid charger to plug his taxi into so he can carry on with the rest of his day.
So he can recharge in 45 minutes?
He can recharge in 45 minutes, as most of us can, up to about 80% in 45 minutes, sometimes a little bit less. And this is called a rapid charger. This is a special kind of charger that you typically see at motorway service stations. It needs 3-phase power and so on. It's not the kind of thing you tend to have at home.
And you have to wrap your car in tin foil, that kind of thing, for it to work, yeah?
Exactly. But there are only a limited number of these in London at the moment. And by the time we start getting all of these taxis finally on the roads that are all going to be requiring these, I'm worried. Another stat for you. Apparently, we need a 6-fold increase in the number of electric chargers by 2020, so really not that far away, if we are to have enough electric chargers to satisfy the number of electric vehicles.
If you've got a drive or a garage at home and you just charge at home all the time and that's it, it's only if you're making long distance trips.
What if you're a taxi driver? What if you're a taxi driver and you have to charge on the go in order for you to do your actual job?
Well, there's places I've been in one. There's like a taxi warehouse where all the taxi drivers hang out. It's like a taxi showroom. Surely there could be like a taxi depot where only taxi drivers get to go and charge.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to require a whole new set of infrastructure, large building spaces or, large car parks essentially to be equipped, and spaces at a premium anyway in city centres. I think it's going to there's going to be a bit of a headache in the next 12 or 18 months with lack of charging infrastructure.
But David, going back to you, and you're not a cab driver.
What?
Okay, I think I know where this is going. Okay.
So I'm interested in charging at home.
Yeah,
have you had to modify your house in any way to allow this? Do you just run an extension lead out the window? How do you actually...
Hang on. There's clearly a joke here that I'm not in on. What's the joke?
Okay. So
how did you break it, David? How did you break it?
Oh, Jeff. So the thing is that if you are to charge an electric vehicle at home, then you need somewhere to park it, whether that's a garage, whether that's a driveway. If you park on the street, like a lot of people do, then you can't very well dangle a cable over.
This is my problem with electric cars. We live on a terraced house, so we don't really have the option to...
Exactly, and at the moment, neither do I, because while I do have a garage and I do have a driveway, my car has been on that driveway twice, and... it scraped both times because my drive is on a bit of a slope and there's a bit of a lip from where the curb goes over and where there used to be a gate there. The suspension on my i3 is quite low, and where I've not really had a problem getting my other cars down that driveway, my i3 basically doesn't fit, which means that I cannot, as things stand, charge up my electric car with the electric stuff that I've got. Now, look, I measured my driveway. I measured this car. I did all kinds of measurements to make sure that it would fit. I did not, however, count on the fact that suspension was so low that while all the rest of the cars that we've parked on our driveway have had not a problem.
Is it not time to get out a pickaxe and chip away at like the concrete lip on your drive?
I'm thinking it's a JCB and a mini pneumatic drill at the moment.
Wow.
Right.
And I'm not even joking, because I need this car to charge and I can't charge it on the pavement outside my house.
So if it were to fit upon your driveway, what have you had to do on your house side to enable the charging?
I see. Okay, so you've really got a couple of options here. You can use a standard 13 amp plug socket.
So just your standard socket that you would plug anything into, like your iPhone into, your laptop.
Exactly.
Okay.
Your hairdryer, whatever else, and you get a cable that comes with the car that will help you to do that.
And it literally just has a 3-pin plug on it.
It's got a 3-pin plug on it, a little breakout box. With a few flashing lights just to give you a bit of diagnostics on whether it's charging and what the temperature's like and so on.
So you could go to someone else's house and say, is it all right if I charge my car while I'm here?
Yes, And when I was parking in my local John Lewis car park yesterday, that's exactly what I did. I didn't knock on someone's door, but they've got some 13 amp plug sockets where you can plug in. But that's quite slow. And that might take you 12, 13 hours for a complete charge of the car. The next level up, you still can have domestically, you can still have these at home, but they are a special box that you have fitted, and that might charge your car in maybe 8 hours or so.
So it's still an overnight option.
Yeah, exactly. But, the same as when you're charging your phone or charging your watch, chances are that, between 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and 7 a.m. it's time to charge your stuff up, and that includes charging yourself up. So, that's as it is. However, there is another option.
So do you have that one? Or
no, I don't have that one yet.
And what is the cost of that, or do you not know?
Well, so there is still a government subsidy for this, and they will give, I think it's up to about £500 or thereabouts. So depending upon which provider you go with, and if you go with BMW, for example, then you'll get an all singing, all dancing one and still end up paying quite a chunk of money. Or you can go with PodPoint or a handful of other ones, and you might pay $250.
But it's a bespoke installation in your house.
Someone will come round and install a box, and they will want it to go into a consumer unit because you are going to be drawing quite a bit of current through there. So
how far off are we having wireless charging? So like your phone, you just pull up on your drive and there's a charge ring sort of embedded in your tarmac. Is that in the next version where they also take away all the buttons on your car, at the expense of wireless charging?
And then put a notch on the windscreen as well.
Hey!
Wireless charging, there are moves afoot to do some testing on that. But yeah, so, you can pay £200, £250 by the time the government subsidy has come off. And indeed, all new homes are supposed to be coming with electric car charging points in the UK as well. And then on motorway service stations, there's what we call rapid charging. And this is 3-phase power, special cables and all the rest of that. And that is where you can get your car charged in, 80% of it done in 30 minutes, 40 minutes or thereabouts.
Is there an app for your phone? Is there like a BMW app and you can sort of see how fast your car is charging on your phone?
Absolutely, yes.
Wow.
Yes, there is. In fact, I'm going to open up my car now.
What's your drive time? Not your screen time. What's your drive time in your BMW app, David?
Actually, I could probably tell you about my last journey in here. So I can tell from my app right now that my last journey was 13 minutes, 5 miles.
Oh God, does it plot it on GPS? Can you see where you went?
Not in this app, or not that I've seen yet, but I've got stats on my last drive and I can see how much electric range I've got left. So 60% in my battery, so 74 miles as things stand. And if I were to run off a full tank of petrol in the range extender, I get another 74 miles. My last journey was 1.5 out of 5 stars in terms of efficiency, and my consumption was 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour.
Thank you. Instead of miles a gallon, it's miles a watt, so it's miles a kilowatt. And presumably, what's the optimum speed? Is it still the classic 56 miles an hour that produces?
I don't know yet.
We need to know, David. For next Frackulous, that's what we're going to ask. Okay.
Give me a chance. I will work it out, and also I'll let you know how I get on with my drive as well.
I mean, I almost want to come up to Leicester and see your car and have a drive in it now.
Oh, Jeff, you are more than welcome. I have to say, it doesn't look like a massive car, but it's really roomy in there. It's quite an experience to drive.
But we just sit and argue in person.
But sorry, David, you were saying you haven't got the charger option installed yet.
I was waiting to see, because apparently it doesn't take that long to get it commissioned and installed. It's not that big a deal. And based upon my anticipated usage of the car, I didn't know if... I guess I wanted a little bit more intelligence into how I was using the car as to whether it was worth the additional expenditure or not. One thing I have got here in this house is Economy 7. So that's whereby I have a different tariff for my fuel usage off-peak overnight. So I'd be able to time the charging of my car so that it's at the cheaper rate of electricity. And I also want to experiment and do a little bit more research into which tariffs work better for me for electric vehicle charging.
So David, you would just be using the 3-pin plug until then?
I'll be using the 3-pin plug well, eventually, hopefully, if I can ever get my car on my bloody driveway.